folks. It's Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue, as I've been doing a lot lately. I did a first stab at this video, and it ended up running like 13 minutes. And so we're going to try to do it a bit more efficiently. I'm talking a bit about Obama's changes to the tax code that he wants to make. And this, I think, is actually a step in the right direction, because what he's trying to do is cut down a lot of the incentive system. The incentive system for moving jobs and money overseas. And of course, he's going to have quite a fight on his hands. If you want more kind of insight into the roots of this problem, I mean, I'm going to post like an article in the sidebar that's going to explain some of this stuff too. But a more in-depth research is David K. Johnston's two most recent books, Free Lunch and Perfectly Legal, which basically talk about how the U.S. government is largely set up to do precisely this. I mean, one of my favorite examples of his, which I don't think is addressed actually by Obama's proposals, but it's just a perfect example of, you know, how these things are not set up to help the United States. There's actually a law in the books which allows companies that do business overseas to trade off U.S. taxes, foreign taxes for U.S. taxes. So if you pay $1 to Saudi Arabia in taxes, that's $1 that you don't have to pay in the United States. That's like immediately taken off your U.S. tax bill. And the reality of how this has worked out is that U.S. corporations go into these foreign countries and say, you know what, why don't you put a tax on us? And like, you know, the oil companies were the first people to realize this. They're doing it with the Saudis. And the Saudis are like, we don't have any taxes, sorry. They said, no, you don't understand. Tax us. We want you to tax us. Tax us for anything you want, you know, probably up to, you know, what they are paying in U.S. taxes, because the oil companies realized that this is basically using their tax dollars to bribe foreign officials. So when they think about it, if they take the amount of money that they would be paying in the U.S. in taxes, well, it's like they'd much rather give that to a bunch of like Saudi oil sheiks who are going to treat them better because of it. You know, it's a way of basically having the U.S. public subsidize bribes to Saudis to benefit U.S. oil companies. And they were the first people to discover this, but this has happened all along. And now, you know, this is something that you know, companies do in China, for example. You know, they went into China, which had no taxes, and on business, and all these U.S. companies are asking, you know, basically implored China to make them pay taxes so they could get out to paying their U.S. taxes. They'd rather bribe Chinese officials with tax money that should be, you know, in this country, you know, building stuff, you know, taking care of services, helping people who are like, you know, need crutches and stuff like that. So what it gets down to is that Obama's trying to shut down a lot of these loopholes, mostly for corporations, a little bit for well-heeled investors. The kinds of things, the kind of tax incentives that exist for companies basically to move jobs and money overseas and to avoid paying taxes. Of course, this has had a predictable response from the business community. They're all howling about how this would be the worst thing ever and how they're all going to immediately go out of business if this happens. Now, you got to realize this for what it is. It's blackmail. People like, you know, the Business Roundtable, the American Chambers of Commerce, Grover Norquist, Nose Twist, as Greg Palast likes to call him, they're always going to monolithically oppose anything that might possibly impinge on the bottom line of companies. And they'll do this whether or not it's well-intentioned or not, whether or not it'll help America or not. But the important thing about blackmail is you got to realize that if you're willing to pay the price, the blackmailer's claims don't mean anything. They can't harm you anymore. You have to be afraid. Let's look at an analogous example. If, like, for example, I slept with a hooker and somebody got pictures of it and they threatened to show my wife. Now, that blackmailer only has power to the extent that I'm afraid to tell my wife that I visited a hooker. If I just immediately go to my wife and I'm willing to pay the consequences and say, look, I slept with a hooker, some guy got some pictures of me, he's trying to blackmail me. Instantly, the blackmailer has no power anymore. I've taken it all away just by being willing to deal with the consequences. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there are going to be no consequences to an enormous increase in the tax burden for some of these companies. But this is in the interest of fairness, and going forward, it is a better idea than what exists now. And of course, it's not just businesses that are upset about this. The businesses are paying for influence, and the people that they're trying to influence are influenced. And there are even some prominent Democrats who are kind of lining up to say, well, I'm not so sure. There's this one congressman from New York. It's like, well, Citibank, takes advantages of some of these loopholes, and they're the biggest employer in my district. Well, they may be the biggest employer in your district now, but they're interested in not being. They would just as soon ship all those jobs overseas. Now, admittedly, this is probably after you're retired, so, who cares if the country's fucked after you're no longer, seeking to be reelected anymore, and you've got yours. But what it all comes down to is we need to call the bluff. We need to accept whatever the consequences are, but then we're also going to have some additional income to deal with the consequences. So there'll be at least some balancing out of things. And it's in pursuit of the goal of having this country actually build things again, in the pursuit of increasing employment in this country, etc. I think these are more worthwhile goals than just kind of endless corporate profiteering, etc. So I think it's all about people paying their fair share. But I don't think Obama's actually going to succeed with this. I just think the forces arrayed against him are too powerful. I think this is going to be his healthcare proposal, like for Clinton. I mean, I think he's going to put a lot of eggs in this basket. I think he's going to do a lot of arm twisting. He's going to try really hard to get it, and he's going to get slapped down. Because the forces arrayed against him are too powerful. Too many really powerful people want things to stay the way they are, including the financial services industry, which Obama has already shown that he's unwilling to take on in any kind of meaningful way. But who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is willing to take them on. Maybe he even is going to be able to twist enough arms to get it. And I think if he did, I think it would be a positive thing. But I just, looking at the realities of the American political situation right now, I just have a hard time believing that's what's going to happen. And I just had to read you, I have an article here which I'm going to post in the sidebar. But this is the extent to which they don't pay their tax. Just if you think this is a minor thing, I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of the extent to which they don't pay their taxes. Now, the marginal U.S. tax rate is 35%. I mean, even companies that do business within the United States, I think, rarely pay 35%. But that is the effective tax rate for corporations operating within the United States. Here's the quotation. Obama argues the system penalizes companies that operate solely on U.S. soil. In 2004, the most recent year for which statistics are available, U.S. multinationals paid an effective U.S. tax rate of 2.3% on $700 billion in foreign profits, the administration says. That's a lot of money that we did not see because of these shenanigans. And think of it also this way. Think of the unbelievable advantage that paying this low a tax gives multinationals against startup companies in the United States that are operating solely in the United States. I mean, how is anything supposed to get started with this kind of institutional unfairness built into our system? Anyway, those are my ideas, and this is probably going to be a one-star video even without being vote botted, but there you go. I'm Zach Elliott, and you can always feel free to argue.